Welcome back to True Rhymes, the place when we investigate the origins of language and the stories that were told by the people that actually lost the fight, not necessarily the victors. There is some controversy in history about whether rhymes and stories of the past are validated by the fact that they're just orally transmitted. Well, I think they are. So here we are in the True Rhymes investigated cave, sitting here, ready to reactivate ourselves. We're just going to hang around King Henry VIII sort of time frame, about the 1500s to 1550s. Around about there was some pretty messed up shit went on during Europe at that particular moment in time. And this little rhyme you'll all know. It's little Jack Horner. So here we go. I'm going to read it to you first, and then we'll have a little bit of a figure out what it's on about. Little Jack Horner sat in the corner eating a Christmas pie. He put in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, "Oh, what a clever boy am I," or "what a good boy am I." Now, the interesting thing, around about there in the 1500s in England, Henry VIII got a little bit toey with the Catholic Church, and he decided that he was going to have his own church. So he set about dismantling the Catholic institutions that were through Europe. Well, not through Europe, but through England particularly. And at that time in history, there was thousands of abbeys and monasteries and goodness knows what through the countryside. There was about 16,000 monks and a couple of nuns that serviced them. And, you know, the whole thing that was going on. And the interesting thing is, when King Henry decided to change the rules, of course, he got pretty rich, didn't he? And there was a lot of messed up crap that went on. There was a few unsavoury things that happened to the poor old Catholic monks. There'd be some amongst us that wouldn't be sad about that, but at the time it was pretty messed up. The interesting thing in the 16th century was the only way to keep your head on your shoulders was to actually be obedient to the king's wishes. But there's always someone that reckons he's going to pull off a better deal. Because there was a few cardinals that were up the food chain in the king's favour. But ultimately, when you set in motion the destruction of a whole organisation, even your friends end up getting swept away in the mess that's going on. So the last abbey that got wiped out was the abbey in Glastonbury, which was one of King Henry VIII's mates, was the dude that owned it, I guess, in the way. And he was trying to buy stave off getting his head cut off pretty much. So he sent along the deeds for the abbey to the king with Jack Horner. Now, you might wonder what the hell was going on with little Jack Horner with his thumb in the pie. Because back in the day, apparently, when you were sending deeds across the countryside, you had to hide them in a pie. So unlike today, when there was all these checks and balances, if you held the deed for a property, it became yours. So just like that, poof, you could all of a sudden be rich. And that's fairly cool. So little Jack Horner, well, old Jack Horner, he was going to take the pie to the king. And of course, he wasn't that bloody dopey. So he pulled the crust off, grabbed the deeds that he wanted, put the thing back together, took them off to the king. And the interesting thing is the king was still pissed because he didn't actually get all the deeds that he wanted because Jack had a few of them in his pocket. But he didn't tell the king that bit. So poor old Richard Whitey, who had actually sent the documents to the king to buy himself some more time, he got stitched up by the messenger boy. And the other thing that I thought was very interesting, bloody Jack Horner ended up as the juror, or one of the jurors, in his bloomin' trial. So poor old Richard is getting tried by the bloke that screwed him over. I mean, what a messy business. But the upside to it was when the king decided to find him guilty, well, I guess the court found him guilty, but the king pretty much found him guilty. They were very nice to him, so they dragged him up the hill and they actually hung him first before they draw and quarter him. I mean, you know, so that was really generous. They actually killed him before they pulled him apart rather than pull him apart. And then, you know, I guess pulling apart gets you dead. But anyway, I thought that was kind of nice. They actually killed him first before they pulled him to bits. And then, just for fun, you know what they did? They stuck his head on top of the abbey that bloody the Horners actually stole from him. How messed up is that? Of course, if you were to have a look in the Horners' cupboard, I am sure they are not going to admit any of this crap. The other interesting little footnote was that abbey that they were trying to preserve, the reason it lasts so long through the centuries was because apparently Joseph of Arimathea, who was the dude who actually gave Jesus the tomb to get buried in, he buggered off to England, apparently, according to stories, but I'm not sure if I buy this one. But anyway, he buggered off to England. He turned up there with his staff, which I'm thinking might have been the post that stuck into Jesus' side, and he put it in the moor, and it turned into a rose bush and flowered in Christmas time. Now, the interesting thing about that is that I'm pretty sure that Jesus didn't actually get bloody born on the 25th of December anyway, but then that's a whole nother can of worms, and we're going to stay the fuck away from there because that get me in all sorts of trouble. So if you're wondering why Jack stuck in his thumb and pulled out a plum, and what that bloody was referencing is the fact that back in the day, a plum was basically £1,000, and of course £1,000 back then in the 1500s, I don't know, I'm not much of a bloody mathematician, but I'm tipping that it was somewhere like $1 million or $1 billion today. So it was a shitload of money. So if you had a plum job, it was called a plum job in the day, and you got bribes and you got paid to do the right thing. So poor old Jack Horner, he stuck in his thumb, pulled out a plum, and he scored a couple of properties that were probably worth more than $100,000. But anyway, so if you happen to be a corrupt politician and you're getting a plum job, hell, ask for some more money, because what the hell, you're already in strife. Or if you're actually working hard in a factory and they say you've got a plum job, hell, hit the boss up for another 100,000. What have you got to lose? If you're really excited and you're quite enjoying this, don't forget to show your girlfriend or your boyfriend, or heaven forbid, my mum. My God, I was talking to my mum the other day and she's looking forward to seeing this show, and I said, I actually asked her if I could be forgiven before she watched us, because I'm just kind of praying that she doesn't really watch us, because it's like this is going to get really, really awkward. But anyway, I love you, Mum.